She dug her child's grave alone, not knowing a human was saving the baby at that moment. Pre-dawn light barely reached the lower blocks of Kethra Rim. Frost collected along the metal walkways in uneven streaks, and the ventilation towers released slow bursts of steam that drifted across the empty corridors. The colony felt colder than it usually did at this hour, as if the temperature had dropped faster than the system predicted. Nairi moved through that quiet with uneven steps. The cold bit into her bare legs where a festival dress failed to cover her, the thin slate gold fabric hanging loose from one broken strap. Her blue skin looked dull and tightened from the cold. Her long white hair clung to her cheeks in tangled strands. She held a bundle of her baby's clothes against her chest. Her fingers locked around it so tightly that the fabric creased under her nails. She felt terrified. Her heart raced in a fast, uneven rhythm. Every shadow made her flinch. Her mind kept replaying the earlier scene with painful clarity. The crowded transit lane, the warning shout, the heavy cargo hauler swerving too close, her body slamming into the pavement, the sudden emptiness in her arms. People rushed by without stopping. Someone told her vehicles don't stop, and they didn't even look at her face when she begged for help. No one followed her down the lanes. No one checked the toppled containers. Her legs trembled now from exhaustion and fear, not from the cold. She whispered the name again. Leary. Her voice cracked. The name barely left her throat. Her background gave her few protections. She had worked in entertainment blocks, light serving, occasional song shifts, greeting customers who wanted distraction from long work cycles. It wasn't dangerous work, but it didn't pay enough to give her stability. She rented a single-room pod in a lower-tier housing strip until she fell behind on payment. The property warden took her only coat when she failed to pay the late fee. She carried Leary everywhere since then. She had no one to watch the baby, no friends in the colony, and no family left on her homeworld. Now she walked alone toward the colony's edge. Her body felt heavy, like her muscles resisted every step. The frost fence glowed faintly ahead of her, marking the boundary between the settlement and the frozen shoreline. She stepped off the walkway and onto the muddy ground where the heaters didn't reach. The mud sucked at her bare feet, cold enough to numb her toes. A drainage pipe nearby leaked a thin line of water that had frozen into jagged ridges. She dropped to her knees. The cold shot up her legs. She didn't react. Her focus stayed on the dirt in front of her. She set the bundle of clothes down and began scraping the soil with her bare hands. The mud clung to her fingers, and the cold made her joints stiff. She felt defeated. Her arms trembled as she dug. Her breaths came in short bursts. She didn't have the strength to stand, but she forced her hands deeper into the ground. She opened the bundle once more. Tiny clothes lay inside, wrinkled, stained with dirt and coolant. The sight made her chest tighten so hard she had to swallow twice before she could breathe. She placed the clothes into the shallow pit with slow, trembling motions. She lowered her forehead to the ground, her hair falling across her face and soaking in the mud. "Leary, I'm sorry," she whispered. Her breath fogged against the dirt. Her vision blurred. A thin cry drifted through the cold air. She didn't respond at first. The sound felt misplaced, almost like an echo in her mind. The wind shifted, and the cry reached her again, sharp, strained, but unmistakably real. Her heart jolted. Her entire body went rigid. Another cry, weak but alive. Nairi lifted her head. She turned slowly, afraid that if she moved too fast, the sound would vanish. A man stood several steps away, tall, broad-shouldered. He wore a dark work jacket zipped halfway, frost clinging to the shoulders. His breath formed steady clouds. His hair was dark brown, short, and slightly disheveled from long hours outside. His eyes were gray-blue, focused and alert. The infant nestled against his chest moved inside a bundle of fabric. White baby hair peeked out from the edge. Nairi felt her lungs seize. She pushed herself up, almost tipping forward. The man stepped closer, adjusting the bundle carefully. His movements were controlled, measured, like someone who had handled fragile things under pressure before. "Turn around. Your baby is alive." His voice was steady, neither loud nor soft, direct in a way that left no room for doubt. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on one hand, her fingers digging into the frozen soil. She stared at him, unable to speak. He came closer, stopping at arm's length. Here, he angled the baby forward slightly. She's cold but breathing. She fought hard. Nairi reached for her daughter with shaking hands. Seth supported the weight until her grip steadied enough to hold the child. The moment Leary settled in her arms, Nairi felt something inside her unlock. She pressed the baby against her chest, her breath breaking in harsh gasps. Seth stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her back when she began to slump. He supported her carefully, his arms steady beneath her shoulder blades. "Easy," he said. His tone carried focus rather than comfort. "Keep her close. Your body heat will help." Nairi's tears fell uncontrollably. She curled around Leary, shaking against Seth's chest. Mud streaked her legs and the hem of her dress. Her arms tightened around her child until her muscles cramped. He assessed her condition with the practiced eye of someone used to emergencies. Seth wasn't part of the colony's medical staff, but his background made his reaction precise. Years ago, he served as a field scout and medic during interstructure border disputes. He had learned to identify shock, trauma, and hypothermia fast. He now worked as a night shift safety supervisor in Kethra Rim, walking cargo lanes to prevent accidents before they injured someone. He wasn't heroic, but he took responsibility seriously. His mission on most nights was simple: keep workers alive, keep equipment stable, fix problems before they escalated. Tonight, his mission had changed. The moment he heard the weak cry echoing in a half-tipped container, he followed it. Not out of duty, but out of compulsion. He couldn't ignore a living sound like that. "You shouldn't stay here," he said. "Your legs are numb. She's still cold. You need warmth and water." Nairi struggled to catch her breath. How did you find her?" "She was trapped behind spilled crates," he said. "If she cried earlier, no one heard. The lane was loud. I checked the container because the angle looked wrong." He kept his hand on her back to help her stay upright. "I'm taking you to my unit. It's closer than the clinic." Her eyes widened with fear. "The clinic, they'll separate us." "I know," he said. "That's why we're not going there." She looked at him, stunned. Something in his expression, steady, grounded, without pity, kept her from pulling away. He shifted his stance, turning his body to shield her from the wind. "You can walk if I guide you. Hold her tight. I'll handle the rest." Nairi took a shaky breath. Her arms curled instinctively around Leary. She nodded once, though her legs trembled beneath her. Seth moved beside her, placing one arm around her back and the other near Leary in case she slipped. He helped her stand. Her knees wobbled violently, but he kept her balanced. "Lean on me," he said. "You're not walking alone." They took the first step together. The mud sucked at their feet and released with a wet pull. The frost fence buzzed faintly behind them as the wind shifted. As they reached the walkway, warm air from nearby vents drifted across their faces. Nairi exhaled sharply. The warmth made her dizzy. Seth adjusted his hold on her, steady and unwavering. Almost there, Nairi clutched Leary tighter, feeling the baby's small weight pressing against her chest. Leary made a soft whimper, warmer now than before. Nairi felt overwhelmed. Fear, relief, confusion, and exhaustion fought inside her chest. She kept her eyes on Seth because looking anywhere else made her knees weaken again. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "Seth Ward," he said, "Night Safety Supervisor. I don't leave people dying in the cold." A small, shaky breath escaped her. Her grip on his jacket tightened. "Please don't let them take her," she said. "I'm not letting anyone take her," he answered, his tone firm and immediate. "Or you?" They continued walking toward the higher levels. Frost melted under the walkway lights ahead. The colony began to shift toward morning, but the streets remained quiet. Seth stayed beside her the entire way, guiding her step by step, his jaw set with a quiet determination he didn't bother to hide. For now, his mission had changed. Get them inside, keep them warm, keep them alive. Seth kept his arm around Nairi as they climbed the narrow walkway toward the upper-tier housing rows. The The metal under their feet vibrated faintly from early morning machinery warming up. Lights along the rail flickered twice before stabilizing, casting a pale glow over their faces. Leary shifted inside Nairi's embrace, letting out a soft, hungry sound. Nairi tightened her hold and pressed her cheek to the baby's head. Her breath shook. She hadn't eaten since late yesterday. Leary hadn't fed since before the accident. Her arms ached from carrying the child for so long, but she refused to lower her. Seth noticed the strain in her grip. "You're holding her right. Keep her close until we get inside." "I won't let go," she said, her voice rough from cold and crying. "You don't have to." He kept guiding her, adjusting his pace when she stumbled on a frozen patch of walkway. His hand never wavered from her back. They reached a quiet row of metal-framed apartment doors. Each unit had a small exhaust grate releasing warm air, carrying scents of reheated meals and detergent. Seth stopped at the third door, punched in a code on the worn keypad, and tapped the release. The door slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. Warmth poured out immediately. The temperature shift made Nairi exhale in relief, so strong her knees nearly buckled. "Inside," Seth said, stepping in first to make space for her. He held the door and waited until she crossed the threshold. The unit was compact but clean. A narrow cot pushed against the right wall, a low table with 2 stools to the left, and a heating strip embedded in the floor along the window. A small galley corner held a metal kettle, dried food packs, and a half loaf of rationed bread wrapped in cloth. There were no decorations, no clutter, just function and warmth. Nairi stopped near the heater strip, hugging Leary tighter as the heat soaked in her legs. Her shoulders slumped from the sudden comfort. Seth locked the door behind her. "Sit," he said, nodding to the cot. "She needs warmth." "You do too." Nairi hesitated. The cot was the only soft surface in the room. Sitting there felt too intimate, too intrusive, but her legs shook badly from exhaustion. She lowered herself onto the edge and adjusted Leary's position. The baby whimpered again. Hunger. Seth caught the sound. When did she last feed? Before the accident. Nairi swallowed hard. "Hours ago. Too many." He opened a storage drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a small packet of warmed grain paste and a collapsible feeding tube. He checked the expiration mark. "This is safe for infants." He approached slowly so she wouldn't flinch. "Let me help." Nairi lifted Leary a little. "I can feed her. Just tell me what to do." Seth knelt beside the cot, close but not crowding her. He handed her the warm packet, guiding her fingers to the seal. "Cut across here. Press gently so it flows. Angle the tube toward her cheek, not straight down." Nairi followed his instructions with shaky hands. Leary latched onto the tube weakly, then more urgently when the first taste reached her. Nairi's eyes filled again, not with grief this time, but relief so sharp it made her exhale in shaky bursts. Seth rose slowly, watching mother and child with a quiet focus. He poured some boiled water into a mug from the galley kettle and set on the table. "Drink when you're ready. You're dehydrated." She nodded without looking up. Seth stepped back, giving her space while still staying within reach. His posture relaxed only slightly, hands loose at his sides, shoulders still alert. The old military habits never fully left him. When Leary finally slowed her feeding, Nairi brushed her fingers through the baby's white hair and kissed her forehead. Her hands steadied a little. She looked around the unit as if noticing it for the first time. "You live alone," she said quietly. "Yes." "No partner? No family here?" "No." He leaned against the wall near the table. "I transferred here last cycle. Safer than border work." She looked up, studying him. "You're not from a trade colony." "No," he met her eyes briefly. "I've seen worse places than this." Nairi shifted Leary in her arms, adjusting the baby's position so she lay against her chest. The warmth from the heater strip reached her bare legs, and the sensation almost made her dizzy. She frowned slightly as she noticed the state of her dress. Torn strap, dirt stains, the slit exposing her thigh almost to her hip. "I didn't mean to come into your home like this." "You came in exactly how you needed to," Seth said. "Don't worry about it." She glanced at him again. "Why help me?" Her tone wasn't accusing. It held confusion, fear, and genuine curiosity. He answered without hesitation, because no one else did. Her eyes lowered. She stroked Leary's cheek with her thumb. "People saw us last night." I begged. "I know," he said. "I heard workers talking before dawn." Nairi lifted her head sharply. "Did they say why they didn't help?" "They said you were loud, crying. They assumed," he stopped there. She finished for him. "They assumed she was dead." "Yes." She hugged Leary closer, her jaw tightening. Seth straightened from the wall. "You're both safe now. That's what matters." She took a slow breath. "You found her in a container?" Seth nodded once. It was tipped at an angle that didn't match the logs. "I checked inside." He watched her hands grip Leary again. She was wedged behind a crate. "We cry. Almost no heat left." Nairi's face tightened. She looked away for a moment to steady herself. Seth walked to a small storage locker near the bed and pulled out a folded black thermal shirt. "This will fit better than what you're wearing. There are leggings too, both clean." Nairi hesitated. "Your clothes. They're spare. Take them." Her fingers brushed the soft fabric as she accepted it. "Thank you." Seth turned away to give her privacy. She changed quickly, her movements stiff from cold and fatigue. When she slipped the shirt over her head, it fell long over her thighs, the neckline loose on one shoulder. The leggings hugged her legs warmly. She felt exposed in a different way now. Cleaner, safer, yet aware of how vulnerable she looked in his clothes. Seth didn't turn until she spoke again. "I'm done." He faced her with no reaction to her appearance beyond a brief, quiet acknowledgement in his eyes. "Better." Nairi lowered herself onto the cot, holding Leary carefully. "What happens now?" Her voice shook slightly. Seth pulled a stool closer and sat near her. "Now you rest. After that, we figure out next steps. You're not returning to the street." "I don't have a place to go," she said. "I was evicted last week. Leary and I slept in a maintenance shelter." "You're staying here," he said. His tone left no space for argument. Nairi looked up slowly. "Why would you let us stay with you?" Seth held her gaze. "Because you need a safe place. And because I'm not letting the colony decide what happens to your child." Her throat tightened. Her eyes softened with a grateful tension she didn't try to hide. He stood again, opening the galley drawer for a ration bar. "Eat this when you can. It'll help." She accepted it with a nod, breaking off a small piece. The texture was dense and slightly sweet, warming in her mouth. The taste made her realize how hungry she actually was. Leary fell asleep against her chest. Nairi brushed her daughter's cheek with 2 fingers, relief settling into her shoulders. Seth watched the moment quietly, something resolute building behind his expression. He didn't say anything more, but the intent was clear in the way he straightened the room, checked the heater level, and adjusted the vent flow. He planned to make sure they didn't face the cold alone again. Seth lowered the lights in the unit, so the room dimmed into a warm, quiet space. The heater strip hummed softly along the floor, spreading enough heat to ease the stiffness in Nairi's legs. She sat on the cot, with Leary asleep against her chest, her hand resting protectively over the baby's back. The oversized black shirt hung loose on her frame, slipping off one shoulder when she shifted her posture. Seth walked toward her with a cup of warm water, set it on the table beside her, and glanced at Leary. "She's warmer now, breathing steady." Nairi nodded. "Thank you. I didn't think I'd ever see her again." "You will," he said. "You're not losing her again." His tone carried a quiet firmness, and she felt her chest tighten at how certain he sounded. He wasn't trying to comfort her. He meant it. She lifted the cup with her free hand and drank slowly. Her hand steadied after the first few sips. Her stomach twisted from hunger, but the water soothed her throat. Seth leaned against the table, arms crossed lightly. "You should sleep soon. I'm afraid if I sleep, she'll be gone again." Her voice cracked, and she cleared it quickly. "She won't," Seth said. "Not while I'm here." She looked up at him. "Why does it matter so much to you? I'm not from your district. I'm nobody here. You're someone's mother," he said. "That's enough." Nairi lowered her gaze to Leary's sleeping face. The baby made a small, snuffling sound and curled closer into her chest. Seth walked to the galley and opened a drawer. "You'll need food when you wake." He placed a sealed meal pack on the table, a small portion of protein stew with grain slices. It's not great, but it's real food. Nairi blinked, surprised. You keep meals like this ready? I keep supplies in case I'm stuck on shift, he said. Or if someone needs them. She hesitated. You help strangers often? Only when they need it. His answer wasn't meant to impress her. It was simply the truth. Leary shifted again, letting out a soft cry. Nairi adjusted her gently, patting the baby's back. Seth watched closely, noting the careful way she repositioned her arm. Your technique is good, he said. Feeding, holding, no one taught you, did they? No, she admitted. I learned while trying not to fall apart. He nodded once. The respect in his expression was subtle, but present. A faint alarm from the walkway outside echoed through the corridor. Nairi's shoulders tensed instantly. Her grip on Leary tightened. Her breath hitched. Seth moved toward the door and checked the outer panel. It's just a maintenance alert. Someone left a vent open. Not security. She exhaled shakily. I thought they were coming. For you? Seth looked at her closely. Did someone threaten you? No, she said, shaking her head. But when you're homeless, every sound feels like a threat. Every stranger looks like someone who might take her. Her voice trembled on the last word. Seth stepped closer. You're not homeless now. She lifted her head slowly, unsure if she heard him right. What do you mean? You're staying here, he said. Both of you. Until you're stable. Longer, if that's what you need. Nairi swallowed hard. Are you sure? I don't want to. You're staying, he repeated, leaving no space for doubt. She felt a wave of relief mixed with fear. The idea of shelter, warmth, and a safe room felt unreal. She clutched Leary's tiny body, almost afraid to accept it. Seth noticed the hesitation. You're not a burden. I have space, and you need safety. It's simple. People don't do things like this, she whispered. Not for someone like me. People should, he said, lowering himself to sit on the floor near her knees, enough to be close without crowding. But they don't. So I will. Nairi stared at him, searching his face for any sign of hidden motive. All she found was tired honesty and a steady resolve. I don't understand you, she said quietly. You don't have to, he replied. Just rest. Her shoulders loosened slowly. The exhaustion she'd been holding back started to push at her bones. She blinked heavily, but forced herself to stay upright. I need to stay awake, she insisted. I have to protect her. You already protected her, Seth said. Now let me help. She opened her mouth to argue, but Leary whimpered again, tired and warm against her chest. Nairi's eyelids dropped, her body leaning forward. Seth reached up gently. Lie down. Hold her close. I'll stay awake. Her breathing hitched, unsure whether to trust the offer. After a long pause, she shifted and stretched out on the cot. Still holding Leary, the baby curled against her blue skin. The oversized shirt draped down her legs, and she pulled the blanket lightly over herself. Leary settled almost immediately, tiny fingers gripping a strand of Nairi's white hair. Seth rose quietly and dimmed the lights even further, leaving only the soft heater glow along the floor. He grabbed one of his old jackets, folded it, and set it near her head as an extra pillow. Nairi barely reacted, her eyes half closed already. Sleep, he said softly. Her voice came out barely above a breath. Will you stay? He sat at the small table, posture straight, eyes on the door. All night, Nairi finally let her body go slack, sleep pulling her under. Her breathing slowed. Leary slept soundly on her chest, rising and falling with each breath of her mother. Seth stayed awake, shoulders squared, jaw set, eyes calm but alert. He watched the shadows on the door, listened to every distant noise, and checked the heater twice. He didn't know exactly what tomorrow would bring, but he knew his role tonight without confusion. He was the barrier between them and anything that might disturb their rest. Seth stayed awake until the first pale strip of morning light crept across the floor. The heater kept the room warm enough, but he checked its setting twice, adjusting it so the air wouldn't dry Leary's breathing. The baby slept curled against Nairi, her small hand gripping the edge of the oversized shirt. Nairi didn't stir once. Exhaustion held her completely still. When Seth finally stood, his legs were stiff from remaining in the same position for hours. He stretched quietly, rolling his shoulders back, then moved to the galley to start heating water. The kettle rattled softly as it warmed. He opened another cupboard, looking for anything that resembled a breakfast he could offer. 2 grain packs, half a ration bread, and dried fruit strips. Enough to get them through the morning. Behind him, fabric rustled. Nairi blinked awake, confusion flickering across her face as she instinctively checked Leary's position. The baby slept peacefully. Only then did Nairi look towards Seth, her voice low and rough from sleep. "You stayed. I told you I would." He poured hot water over a grain pack and stirred it until it thickened. "How's your breathing? Any dizziness?" "A little," she admitted. Her hand brushed a strand of white hair from her face. "But warmer. Better." Her gaze moved around the room, slow, cautious, confirming that nothing had changed overnight. Only then did her shoulders sink into the blanket with a shaky exhale. She noticed Seth's jacket folded beside her head. "You gave me this?" "You needed support," he said. "The cot's thin." Nairi traced the edge of the jacket with her thumb. "No one's done something like that for me in a long time." Seth placed the steaming bowl on the table near her. "Eat before it cools. You need the calories." Leary shifted, letting out a small cry. Nairi immediately sat up, adjusting her hold. She moved gently, keeping the baby close. Seth handed her the feeding tube without her asking. "I warmed the paste a little," he said. "You already knew she'd wake hungry?" "Babies follow patterns," he answered, "even in chaos." She looked at him for a moment, studying the calm steadiness in his tone. "You sound like someone who's done this before." Seth paused. "Not with my own child." He stepped back, leaning an elbow on the counter. "But I've taken care of injured kids during evac cycles. Some barely older than her. So that's where you learned all this." She fed Leary, watching the baby's small lips latch around the tube. "You just don't hesitate." "Hesitating gets people hurt," he replied quietly. "Learned that years ago." Nairi glanced up, catching a shadow behind his voice. She didn't push. Instead, she focused on the steady rhythm of feeding Leary. Once the baby finished, Nairi wiped her mouth with the corner of the thermal shirt and cradled her close again. Her own stomach growled softly. Seth heard it, but didn't comment. He pushed a bowl of grain toward her. "Eat." She took a spoonful. The texture was thick and slightly sweet, clinging to the inside of her mouth. It wasn't luxury food, but filled her quickly. She swallowed and took a second bite. Seth watched her for a moment, then turned to check the heating panel. "I need to ask you something," he said. "It matters for your safety." Nairi tensed. "What is it?" "Before the accident," he said carefully, "did anyone follow you? Anyone ask where you lived? Anyone try to take her?" Her grip on Leary tightened. "No, nothing like that. We were just walking home. The hauler came too fast. People pushed. I fell. When I stood up, her voice thinned. She wasn't in my arms anymore." Seth gave a small nod. "Then this wasn't targeted, just a colony mistake." He ran a hand along his jaw, thinking, "Good. That means no one's looking to claim her." Nairi's eyes widened. "Claim her? Lower-tier units sometimes take abandoned infants to clinics for credits," he said plainly. "If someone thought she died, they wouldn't bother searching. But if someone thought she was alive and unclaimed, they might try to file ownership for the stipend." Nairi looked sick. "But I didn't abandon." "I know," Seth said, meeting her gaze sharply. "And I won't let anyone register her before you do." She stared at him, breath catching. "You'd stop them?" "Yes." Her throat tightened as she swallowed. She wasn't used to anyone speaking for her with such certainty. Seth straightened from the heater panel. "Later, when you feel stronger, we'll go to the outer registry kiosk. Quiet one. They won't ask questions if I'm with you." Her breathing steadied. "Why would they listen to you?" "Because I know most of the night shift officers," he said. "And because I'm not afraid to stand in front of a desk until someone does their job." Nairi blinked, almost stunned by his directness. "You've barely known us a day. I don't need weeks to know what's right." She looked down at her daughter, brushing her palm over Leary's tiny back. "You talk like someone who already decided his part in this." "I have." Seth pulled on his boots and checked the outer door panel. "You and Leary aren't temporary. You stay here until you choose otherwise." Her voice trembled. "Is that really what you want? Not out of charity, but because you want us here?" "Yes." He said it without hesitation. Before she could answer, a soft knock hit the door, polite but unexpected. Nairi froze, clutching Leary protectively. Her breath quickened. Seth's posture shifted in an instant, shoulders straightened, stance firm. He moved to the door but didn't open it. "Maintenance," he called through the steel. A voice responded. "Morning sweep. Filter check. 2 minutes." Seth glanced at Nairi. She looked terrified but silent. He lowered his voice. "He's harmless. Stay where you are." He cracked the door open just enough to block the view inside with his body. The maintenance worker barely looked up from his scanner. "Filter reading flagged your unit. Need to run a check." "It's fine," Seth said. "I already reset the panel. Must have been the heater spike." The worker shrugged. "Then I need a visual." He moved forward. Seth widened his stance slightly, blocking the entry. "Not right now." The worker paused. "Regulations say." "I said it's not a good time," Seth repeated, voice calm but unmovable. Something in his tone made the worker stop pushing. "I'll mark it for later," he muttered. Seth nodded once and closed the door. Nairi let out a breath she had been suppressing. "You stopped him. He doesn't need to see inside. Not until you're registered." Nairi looked at him with a complicated mix of relief and disbelief. She shifted Leary in her arms and brushed a thumb under her eye. "Why are you doing all of this for me?" she whispered. Seth stood still for a moment, expression steady. "Because you and your daughter were treated like you didn't matter. And because I'm not letting that happen again." Nairi's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something but didn't trust her voice. Seth stepped closer, slow enough for her not to flinch. "Rest a little more. Then we'll take the first steps to make your stay here permanent." The word permanent hit her with unexpected force. She held Leary against her chest and nodded once, her eyes warmer than they had been since dawn. Seth returned to the table, keeping himself between her and the door, not aggressively, but as someone who understood his role and accepted it without hesitation. The afternoon light filtered through the narrow window, soft and pale, casting long rectangles across the floor. The heater kept the room warm, but the air still held a faint chill from the corridor outside. Nairi sat on the edge of the cot, adjusting the thermal shirt that kept slipping down one shoulder. Leary slept curled against her, wrapped in the blanket Seth had warmed earlier. Her tiny breaths rose and fell against Nairi's chest. Seth checked his wrist console for the cycle time, then stepped away from the door panel. "If we go now, the outer registry kiosk will be quiet," he said. "Shift change keeps most of the clerks distracted." Nairi's stomach tightened. "Do we have to do it today?" "It's better if we do," he answered. "You'll be on the record as her mother. No one can claim her after that." She looked down at Leary, running a thumb gently across the baby's cheek. The thought of stepping back into the colony's cold corridors made her chest tighten, but the fear of losing her daughter again was far worse. "Then let's go." Seth nodded once, already reaching for a compact carrier wrap from his storage locker. "Here," he held out to her. "You'll be steadier if your arms are free." Nairi hesitated before slipping Leary into the wrap. The fabric hugged the baby securely against her chest. Nairi adjusted the straps until the weight felt right. Her hand still shook faintly. Seth noticed. He didn't comment. Instead, he took his jacket from the hook and stepped closer. "Arms." She blinked up at him. "You're wearing my shirt," he said simply, "but you'll freeze outside without a layer." Her cheeks warmed slightly as she slid her arms into the sleeves. The jacket dwarfed her, hanging past her hips. The collar brushed her jaw, carrying Seth's faint scent of metal, cold air, and the herbal cleaner used in cargo lanes. "Ready?" he asked. She exhaled slowly. "Yes." Seth opened the door and glanced both ways down the corridor. "Stay close." His tone wasn't commanding. It was protective, grounded. They walked together through the walkways, passing early shift workers and vendors opening their stalls. No one paid them much attention, but Nairi still lowered her head when a group of traders passed by. Seth angled his body slightly in front of her, a deliberate act of shielding without making it obvious. "Were you always like this?" she asked quietly. "Putting yourself in front of people." Seth kept his eyes forward. "Habit from my old work. I used to guide evac groups during conflicts. Families moved slower when they were scared. Someone had to stand between them and the chaos. Nairi watched him from the side. Did you lose people? His jaw tightened a fraction. Yes, more than I should have. Is that why you reacted the way you did when you heard Leary? I know the sound of a child trying to stay alive, he said. It doesn't leave your head. They turned down a quieter hallway where the floors were cleaner, the lights stable. A man at a food stall scraped cooked grains into a large pan, the smell warm and sharp in the cold air. Seth slowed his pace. You should eat before we register, he said. I can wait. You've been waiting since yesterday. He stepped to the counter. 2 warm grain bowls. The vendor handed them small metal containers of steaming grain cooked with broth and salt. Seth paid without hesitation and passed one to Nairi. Eat. She held the warm metal in one hand and took a spoonful. The thick, salty grain coated her mouth, and her stomach tightened with hunger. This is better than ration packs, she murmured. Seth took a spoonful of his own. Hot food helps you think, helps you stand. Nairi studied him carefully. You pay attention to everything. That's how you stay alive in places like this. She didn't argue, because he was right. When they reached the outer registry kiosk, the hallway was empty except for a bored clerk flipping through a screen panel. Seth stepped inside first, his presence signaling purpose before he even spoke. Registry update, he said. The clerk glanced up. Mother and child? His eyes flicked toward Nairi. Seth didn't let the silence stretch. Yes, she lost her child in the transit chaos. I found the baby. They're here to finalize documentation. The clerk hesitated. Lost and found cases usually go to the main clinic. There were mishandling cases today, Seth cut in calmly. You're quieter and more efficient. Put her as the legal parent. The clerk looked at Seth again, something about his steadiness making the man straighten his posture. All right, step forward. Nairi stepped to the counter, adjusting the carrier around Leary. Her heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. My name is Nairi Laurelin. This is my daughter, Leary Laurelin. The clerk entered the information. Affirmation of guardianship. Yes, she said. Seth rested his hand lightly at her back for support, not touching her too closely, but enough for her to know he was there. The clerk scanned the carrier lightly. Child matches biometric pattern. Registry complete. He stamped the form and slid it across the counter. She's yours in the system. No disputes. Nairi took the stamp tag with trembling fingers. Thank you. She stepped back from the counter, pressing the tag to her chest. Her eyes shone, not with tears this time, but something steadier, firmer. Seth watched her quietly. You're registered now. No one can challenge that. She looked up at him with a relief that shook her voice. You did this for us. You needed it, he said simply. They left the kiosk and walked into the cooler air of the hallway. Nairi stopped just outside, leaning against the railing. She took a long breath, closing her eyes for a moment. I feel like I can breathe again, she whispered. Seth stepped beside her, close enough for her to feel his warmth through the jacket. Good. That's how it's supposed to be. What happens now? She asked softly. I take you home, he said, and we start building something stable. You and Leary aren't alone anymore. She looked at him, the words catching in her throat. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she shifted closer to him, not quite touching, but clearly choosing the space beside him. For the first time since the accident, she stood taller. The walk back to Seth's unit felt different this time. Nairi stayed close to him on purpose, not because she was afraid of getting lost, but because she wanted the steady heat of his presence while Leary slept against her chest. The registration tag rested safely in her pocket, the stamped mark still warm from the printer. When they reached the upper-tier walkway, a cold wind swept past. Seth shifted instantly, placing his body between her and the breeze. Hold her wrapped tighter, he said quietly. Nairi adjusted the carrier. The baby didn't stir. They entered the unit, and the door sealed behind them with a soft click. The warmth inside greeted her like a blanket. Seth took his jacket from her shoulders, folding it cleanly and hanging it on the hook. She felt the air touch her bare thighs where the oversized shirt fell, and suddenly the room felt smaller, like his closeness filled more space than before. You should sit, Seth said. You walked far today. She didn't move. Instead, she held his gaze. I'm not as fragile as I looked yesterday. I know, He locked the door, then leaned one hand against the metal frame, studying her quietly. But you were exhausted. Today, you're different. Nairi shifted Leary slightly, brushing a thumb along the baby's small back. Different how? Steadier. His eyes traced her face, her posture, the way she held herself now. Less afraid. Because of you, she said. She didn't hesitate. Seth didn't reply immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to unfasten the carrier straps. His fingers brushed hers, firm and warm. She felt the contact deep in her stomach. "Let me," he said. She let him. Their hands worked together, slowly loosening the straps. Her breath tightened each time his skin touched hers, even in passing. Once the carrier released, he lifted Leary carefully from her chest. His hands were gentle, practiced. The baby sighed and settled easily against him as if she already knew the shape of his body. "She likes you," Nairi said in a quiet voice. Seth looked down at the tiny face tucked under his chin. Most infants cry when they're passed between people. She doesn't. Maybe she knows you saved her. He didn't answer. He held Leary with one arm, supporting her head, then reached to turn on the low heater beside the cot. "You go change," he said. "You're covered in mud from yesterday." She glanced down at her legs, blue skin streaked with dried dirt, dried tear marks on her cheeks. "Where are the leggings you found?" "On the hook." His voice stayed steady, but he watched her carefully, his eyes tracking every movement without rush or hunger. He simply saw her. Nairi went to the small corner where the leggings hung and began to pull them on. The thermal shirt slid higher as she lifted one leg, exposing the curve of her hip. She felt Seth glance away slightly, jaw tightening, as though he was trying to give her privacy, even though the unit was too compact to truly look anywhere else. When she finished dressing, she stepped back toward him. He was still holding Leary, but his attention shifted to Nairi the moment she approached. His gaze moved from her face to the way the shirt fell around her, then returned to her eyes. "You look warmer," he said. "You look tired," she replied. "I stayed awake. You needed to sleep." She reached out slowly and touched his wrist. His skin was warm, rough from years of field work. "You can sleep now. I'll watch her." He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. Then, without breaking eye contact, he lowered Leary into the cot. The baby didn't stir. Seth made sure the blanket covered her, then stood. The room felt heavy with silence. Not uncomfortable, but thick with something unspoken. Nairi stepped closer, the floor warm under her bare feet. "You keep doing that," she said softly. "Doing what?" "Putting yourself in front of me. In front of everything." He didn't deny it. "That's how I work." "But why with me?" she asked, her voice low. Seth studied her face, the fear and strength mixed there, the way she was finally standing tall instead of curled into herself. He reached up and brushed a streak of dried mud from her cheekbone with his thumb. His touch was slow, deliberate, testing her reaction. She didn't pull away. Her breath hitched at the contact. His thumb hovered near the corner of her mouth for a second too long. "You needed someone who wouldn't fail you," he said quietly. "And I'm not in the habit of walking away." Nairi stepped closer until her shoulder brushed his chest. The movement was small but intentional. She felt his body tense, not in discomfort but in restraint. "You don't have to hold back," she whispered. Seth's jaw shifted slightly. "I'm trying not to rush you." "You're not," she said. Her voice had a soft tremor, not from fear, but from wanting something she didn't fully understand yet. She laid her hand on his chest, feeling the heat beneath his shirt, the steady rhythm of his breath. "I feel safe with you." His hand moved to her waist, fingers resting lightly on the fabric of the shirt. His grip didn't tighten, but she felt the strength behind it. "I need to be sure," he said. "You saved my child," she whispered. "You let us stay. You stood in front of that clerk like you'd known us for years. I think your actions already answered everything." Seth exhaled once, slow, like a man letting down a wall he'd been holding up for hours. He leaned his forehead to hers. The contact was simple, skin to skin, warm in the space between them. His hand slid from her waist to the small of her back, drawing her closer until her body pressed lightly against his. Nairi's hands rose to his shoulders. Her fingers curled there, steadying herself. "Tell me if you want me to stop," he murmured. "I won't," she said. Seth dipped his head and kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was slow, warmth meeting warmth, his hand moving up her spine, hers tightening on his shoulders. The kiss deepened only when she leaned into him, giving him her weight. He lifted her slightly, enough for her feet to shift off balance, then set her back down with the same control. When they finally separated, her breath trembled against his cheek. He rested his forehead back against hers, eyes half closed. "We take this slowly. You deserve that." She nodded once, still close enough that her lips brushed the corner of his. "Then stay close." He wrapped an arm around her waist and guided her toward the cot where Leary slept. Not to lie down, but to sit beside her, shoulder to shoulder, their hands intertwined while the baby breathed softly between them. Their bodies stayed close, their breathing synced, the first real step towards something deeper beginning in the quiet warmth of the small unit. The room stayed quiet long after the kiss faded into the warm air between them. Seth didn't move his hand from Nairi's waist. He kept it there, solid and steady, as if he were memorizing the feel of her standing beside him. Nairi leaned her shoulder lightly against his, grounding herself in the closeness. Leary slept a few inches from them, her small breath soft and even. Nairi looked down at her daughter, then back at Seth. "I never thought I'd sit like this again," she said quietly. "With someone beside me." Seth squeezed her hand once. "You're not doing anything alone anymore." There was no exaggeration in his voice, no hesitation, just simple truth. She brushed a strand of white hair behind her ear, her cheeks still warm from the kiss. "Do you always commit this fast?" "Only when I'm sure," he said. "And I'm sure." Her breath caught. She didn't hide the small tremor in her smile. Seth shifted slightly and moved his arm around her shoulders, drawing her closer in a slow, deliberate motion. Nairi settled against him, resting her head against the side of his neck. She felt the heat of his skin through the thin fabric of her shirt. His scent, metal, warmth, something clean, was comforting in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Leary stirred once, then quieted again. Seth kept his voice low. "You need rest. Real rest. Not the kind you take while waiting for danger." She closed her eyes briefly. "I'm afraid if I sleep, something will happen." "Nothing will," he said. His fingers brushed the top of her arm. "Not while I'm here. Not tonight. Not tomorrow." She lifted her head enough to look him directly in the eyes. "You say things so simply, like promises aren't heavy to you." "They're heavy," he answered. "That's why I don't break them." Nairi's chest tightened with something warm that spread down through her stomach. She turned toward him fully, pulling her legs onto the cot so she could face him better. Her knee brushed against his thigh. She didn't move it. "You keep saying I'm safe," she said softly. "I'm starting to believe you." Seth reached up and touched the side of her jaw gently, guiding her face closer. "Good." She didn't wait for him to kiss her this time. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, slow, certain, not testing anymore. Seth responded instantly, shifting his hand to the back of her neck. The kiss deepened naturally, their breaths mixing, their bodies moving a little closer. When she pulled back, her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I don't feel scared when you touch me." "You shouldn't," he said. His thumb brushed the edge of her lower lip. "I'm careful with what I want." "And what do you want?" she asked, steady but breathless. Seth's answer was immediate. "You. With me. Fully. When you choose it." Nairi swallowed, a soft ache blooming in her chest. "I'm choosing it now." His eyes darkened slightly, but he didn't rush forward. He lifted his hand from her jaw and laid it on her hip, the grip gentle but confident. "Then come here." She moved closer until her legs aligned with his, her thighs brushing his knees. The oversized shirt fell slightly off her shoulder again, exposing more of her blue skin to the warm air. Seth's fingers slid slowly along her hip to her waist, pulling her onto his lap, not forcefully, but guiding her with steady patience. She straddled him instinctively, knees braced beside his hips, hands resting on his shoulders for balance. Her breath caught when she realized how close they were now, no space left between their bodies. She felt the strength beneath his calm exterior, the tension in his hands, the restraint he held onto even when she pressed her forehead to his. He kissed her again, deeper, firmer, holding the back of her head with one hand, her waist with the other. She answered each movement eagerly, her fingers tightening in his shirt. The world outside faded to the hum of distant vents. But when her breath turned shaky, Seth paused. He pulled back only enough to look at her clearly. "Are you sure?" Nairi nodded. "I've never been more sure." He exhaled quietly, touching his forehead to hers again. The control in his posture softened just enough to let her feel the warmth beneath it. His hands glided down her back, slow and confident, grounding her with every inch. But he didn't lie her down. Not yet. Instead, he wrapped both arms around her waist and held her against his chest. His voice was low, close to her ear. "Then tonight, we stay close. Very close. And when you're fully ready, when there's no fear left, we go further together." She didn't disagree. She didn't pull away either. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face against his shoulder. Her whole body relaxed into him with a deep, relieved breath. "I want that," she whispered. "But I want you to stay like this first." "I'm not going anywhere," Seth said. They sat like that, bodies pressed together, his hands tracing slow patterns down her back, her grip tightening around him whenever her breath hitched. The physical closeness was intimate, not rushed, not uncertain. A decision made and shared. Leary slept peacefully beside them, unaware of the moment, quietly reshaping the space between her mother and the man who had saved them both. Nairi lifted her head and kissed him one more time. Soft, lingering, a promise of what they were building. Seth's arms tightened around her waist in answer, drawing her closer still. Tonight, closeness was enough. Tomorrow, they would go further. Days turned into weeks without either of them naming it out loud. Morning started the same way now. The soft click of the heater cycling up, pale light pushing through the narrow window, Leary making small sounds before fully waking. Nairi would feel Seth shift behind her in the narrow cot, his arm already draped around her waist, his hand spread over her stomach as if it had been there all night. He always woke first. "Stay," she would murmur when he tried to move his arm away. "I'm not going anywhere," he'd answer, his voice rough with sleep. Today, the routine felt different. Nairi lay on her side, facing the window. Her blue skin caught the dim light in soft gradients. The black shirt she claimed as her own had started to stretch a little around her chest and belly. She placed her hand over Seth's, pressing it more firmly against her abdomen. She felt a strange heaviness there again. Not unpleasant, just new. "You're tense," Seth said quietly behind her. His breath warmed the back of her neck. "I'm thinking," she replied. "About what?" "About why your shirt is shrinking," she said. There was a beat of silence. Then she felt his chest rise in a short, surprised laugh. "It's not the shirt," he said. "I know." Her voice dropped. "That's what scares me." He tightened his arm around her gently, pulling her closer against him. "Does it scare you in a way you want to run from? Or in a way you want to sit with? In a way that makes it hard to breathe? But I don't want to move," she said. "So, sit with, I guess." Seth didn't push further. He rested his chin lightly against her shoulder, his stubble brushing her skin. "Then we sit with it, together." Leary stirred in her crib, a small, impatient sound. Nairi shifted, and Seth loosened his hold so she could roll onto her back. She sat up slowly, one hand braced on the cot, the other still on her stomach. The dizziness that had been appearing in the mornings returned, but gentler now. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed. "Seth, watch her closely. You're going to tell me what's going on in your head at some point, right?" "Yes," she said. "Just not before coffee." He stood, bare feet quiet on the floor, and moved to the galley without another question. He poured Ferlin seed grounds into the small filter, set the kettle, and glanced back at her. Nairi lifted Leary from the crib and settled the baby on her hip. Leary clung to her shirt with small, confident hands. The girl had grown stronger, more vocal. She babbled nonsense, sounds at Seth as he crossed back with 2 cups. He handed one to Nairi. "Careful, it's hot." She took a sip, the bitter steam flushing her face. You've been watching me, she said. Since the first night. Yes. I mean lately, she added. You keep looking at me like you're waiting for something you already know. Seth sat on the edge of the table, one hand wrapped around his mug. You've been more tired. You've been nauseous in the mornings. Your body's changing. He spoke calmly. No alarm. I wanted you to say it first. She lowered her gaze to her stomach, fingers tracing the slight swell there. I think I'm pregnant, she said. The word came out steady, but her shoulders tightened. Seth's grip on his mug eased, not tightened. I know. Her eyes snapped up. You know, I suspected weeks ago, he said. I was waiting in case it was something else. He studied her face. How do you feel about it? She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Like someone rewrote my life without asking permission. And now that you know, he pressed, still calm. She looked at Leary, who was chewing on the edge of the blanket, content and unaware. Then she returned her gaze to Seth. I don't feel trapped, she said slowly. That's the strange part. I thought I would. Seth's jaw relaxed slightly. Good. But I feel exposed, she added. Like every choice I make now is louder. Like it matters more. It does matter, he said. To all three of you. 3. The word hit her chest with weight and warmth at the same time. She shifted Leary to her other hip, then spoke before her courage could drop. Do you want this? His answer was immediate. Yes. You didn't even think about it, she said, watching him closely. I've had weeks to think, he replied. I thought about you, about her, about another little one in this room. I looked at the numbers, the work shifts, the food rations, and I still want it. I want them. Her eyes softened. You really planned all of that in your head? I'm not the type to step into something halfway, he said. If you're carrying my child, then we plan, we commit, and we do this right. Emotion climbed in her chest, sharp and tender. You're very sure of us. Are you not? He asked, not accusing, just direct. She swallowed. I am. I just never thought I'd get this again. A home, a partner, a second chance at a family. Seth pushed off the table and crossed the room. He took Leary gently from her arms, shifted the baby against his chest, then held out his free hand to Nairi. Come with me, he said. Where? She asked. Outside. She frowned. It's cold. You have my clothes, he said. You'll be fine. She set her mug aside, took his hand, and let him lead her to the jacket on the hook. He helped her into it, tugging the collar up around her neck. The gesture felt intimate in a quiet, practical way. Leary settled against him, tiny fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt. Seth adjusted his hold so the baby's head rested safely against his chest. He opened the door, checked the corridor, then nodded for Naira to follow. They walked in silence through the upper walkways, then down toward the outer edge of the colony. The air bit sharper here, and clouds hovered low over the frozen sea beyond the perimeter. The frost fence glowed in a steady line. Nairi slowed when she recognized where he was leading her. The patch of ground where she had dug with her bare hands looked different now. Frost had sealed the disturbed earth into a rough, uneven surface. The shallow depression was still visible if someone knew where to look. Her steps faltered. You brought me back here, she said quietly. Yes. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. The wind lifted loose strands of white hair across her face. What? Seth stopped a few steps away from the disturbed ground. He turned to her, Leary still resting easily against his chest. Because this is where everything broke for you, he said, and where everything started for us. His voice stayed level. I don't want you to keep walking past it alone in your head. She stared at the patch of earth. The memory of kneeling there, pressing tiny clothes into the mud, hit her hard. Her throat tightened and her eyes burned. I thought I buried her, she whispered. I thought this was the only thing left of my child. Seth stepped closer, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers. He shifted Leary so the baby faced outward, looking at the open ground with wide, calm eyes. You didn't bury her, he said. You buried the colony's indifference. You buried what they told you was the only ending. Nairi's breath shook. It still feels like a grave. That's why we're here, he said. To change what this place means. She turned her face toward him, searching his expression. Ow! He held her gaze. We mark it as something else. Not where you lost her. Where you got her back. Where you chose a different life. And what about this one? She covered his hand, pressing it more firmly to her abdomen. "The one we created? This is where I choose them too," he said. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. They hung there, bright, then receded as she steadied herself. "What are you asking me?" she said. Seth shifted Leary to one arm and reached into his jacket pocket with the other. He pulled out a small metal band, simple, matte, no ornamentation, with a thin notch along the inside. "It's not decoration," he said. "It's a bond marker. Old habit from evac teams. You press it to your skin, register an imprint, and it links to a second band. It's how we kept track of who refused to leave each other behind." Nairi looked at the band, then at him. "You had more than one of those once." "Yes," he said. "Most of those people are gone." Her chest tightened. "And you kept one." "I kept two," he corrected. "One is at home. This is the other." He held it out, his expression steady. "I want this one to be linked to you." She felt the weight of the moment like pressure in the air. "You're asking me to bind to you." "Here." "Yes." "As what?" she asked, wanting to hear it clearly. "As my partner," he said. "As the woman I wake up with. As the mother of the children I protect. As the person I don't walk away from. Ever." The wind cut between them, sharp and cold, but the heat in her chest spread wider than the chill. "Do you really want to tie yourself to a blue-skinned ex-entertainment worker with no savings, your shirt on her body, and a child in each arm?" she asked, half testing, half teasing, but with a raw edge under it. Seth didn't look away. "I want to tie myself to the woman who dug with her bare hands in frozen ground because she refused to leave her child's clothes in the street. To the woman who still stood up the next day and walked to a registry kiosk. To the woman carrying my child and not running from the weight of it." Her breath came out in one sharp exhale. "If I say yes, there's no simple escape later." "That's the point," he said. Silence stretched for a few heartbeats. Then Nairi stepped forward, closing the distance between them. She took the band from his hand. "Give me your wrist," she said. He extended his arm without hesitation. She pressed the band to the inside of his wrist. It clicked softly, warmed, and a faint light flickered before sinking into the metal. The notch glowed once, then dimmed. "That's you," he said. "It'll match when we contact the second band." Nairi placed her free hand back on her stomach, over his fingers. "Then I want a matching imprint." He watched her closely. "Are you sure?" "Yes." He reached into his pocket again and pulled out the second band. He took her wrist gently, turning it upward. Her pulse beat fast against his fingers, but she didn't pull away. He pressed the band to her skin. The same soft click, the same brief warmth. When the light faded, she felt a small, steady hum under the metal, a constant reminder of connection. She swallowed. "So what are we now?" He didn't give her a complex answer. "We're ours," he said. Nairi's lips parted, a small, disbelieving smile finally breaking across her face. It wasn't wide. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Leary made a small sound, kicking her feet as the wind brushed her cheeks. Nairi stepped closer to her daughter and placed her hand over Seth's again, pressing all four of them together in one tight cluster. "This place isn't a grave anymore," she said quietly. "It's where we started." He nodded. "And where we decided not to let anyone else decide for us again." She turned to him fully and rose on her toes, kissing him with a steadiness she hadn't had before. No hesitation, no flinching, just a firm, grounded choice. Seth kissed her back, one arm around her waist, the other securing Leary between them so the baby stayed warm. When they broke apart, Nairi rested her forehead against his. "Take us home, Seth." "Home," he repeated softly. "Say it again." She smiled, small but steady. "Take us home." They walked back toward the colony lights, Nairi with one hand on her abdomen and the other brushing Seth's, Seth carrying Leary against his chest, his new bond mark faintly warm on his wrist. The cold wind still cut through the corridors, and the metal walkways were still lined with frost. But when they reached the door of their unit, Nairi felt something she hadn't felt since before the accident. She stepped into the warmth, inhaled the familiar scent of heated metal, coffee, and the faint sweetness of dried fruit. "This is our home," she said. Seth locked the door behind them and kissed her temple. "Yes, it is." Leary laughed suddenly, a short, bright sound that filled the small room. Nairi looked down at her daughter, then at the man who had refused to walk past a faint cry in a cargo container. Her hand drifted once more to her stomach, palm open and steady. "How many times," she asked quietly, "do I get to say thank you before it's too much?" Seth sat leery in her crib and turned back to her. "You don't owe me thank you," he said. "Just stay." She nodded. "Then I'll stay. With you. With them." He stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, holding her in the center of the small room as the heater hummed and the frost outside thickened. In a colony that still moved on with its usual cold routines, one unit had shifted its orbit around something else entirely. A woman who refused to give up, a man who refused to walk away, a child who refused to stop breathing, and another life growing quietly between them. Their story didn't end at the almost grave in the frost. It continued here in a warm, cramped room that now finally belonged to all of them.